It's time for Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott. He's just back from Atlanta and the Microsoft Tech Ed Conference. He's got news of that, plus the new Mango update for Windows Phone 7. It's all coming up next with Paul Thurrott on Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
It's time for Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 209, recorded May 20th, 2011. Your call is important to us. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Go to Assist Express. If you provide technical support to clients, colleagues, friends, or family, do it easily without being there in person with Go to Assist Express. For a free 30-day trial, visit gotoassist.com/Windows. And by Audible.com. To download the free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/Windows. And by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies streamed to your PC, Mac, or TV instantly. Plus, get DVDs by mail in about one business day. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show that covers all the latest news from Microsoft. And joining us now to do so, Mr. Michael. I don't know where Michael came from. Mr. Michael Thurrott. Paul Thurrott, editor-in-chief of the SuperSite for Windows at winsupersite.com.
I could have been a Michael.
Did your parents ever tell you, Paul Thurrott, what other names they were considering?
No, because there were no other names. My father's name is Paul, and he has a bit of an ego complex.
Mine as well. My narcissistic father named me the same as him.
I'll just point out I named my own son Mark, and we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, there's no Leos. I was Leo, not Leo. And my father was Leo, my grandfather was Leo, my great-grandfather was Leo, my great-great-grandfather was Leo. We don't even know. It goes back to the dim mists of obscurity. But right. I never considered Leo for Henry, my son. We considered two names, actually. One was Buck, and the other was Lucky. Well, I thought, because a name really sets you up for life. You know, if you're if you're a woman and you're named Bertha, it's not going to go well. Sorry, if your name is Bertha and you're listening, I apologize. But come on, really.
Sure. Some names seem like punishments.
If you're a guy and you're named Homer,
right,
it's not going to go well.
We have a phrase that, you are a Homer.
Yeah.
Which is not really a positive description.
So that's why I thought Buck, so he'd be wealthy. Yeah. Or Lucky, he'd just be lucky in general. And my wife, of all people, said no.
Well, yeah, she would be the one.
Homer Laporte.
Yeah.
What if my kids were Homer and Bertha Laporte?
Yikes.
No.
Didn't want kids, huh? I think that would be the message. My feeling was simply that my last name is so hard to spell and pronounce that maybe we should just give the children simple
Mark is a good Mark Thurrott. That's good. Yeah. And we did the same thing with Henry, or Hank, as he is wont to be known.
So, so in both cases, but my daughter's name is Kelly, and in both cases, what we were looking for is a name that you couldn't possibly misspell. But of course, both names, in fact, have at least two spellings. Mark can be spelled with a C, and Kelly, E-Y-R, which is Y. So I often joke that when people occasionally will say, when I say my son's name is Mark, and they'll say, is that with a C or a K? And I'll say, that's with a Q-U-E.
Yeah, I actually had, my college roommate was M-A-R-C-Q-K.
Yikes.
Just to drive you crazy.
So we tried, but that's what happened.
Well, anyway, Mr. Thurrott, welcome to the show. Yes. Now that we've this is the baby naming portion of the show. It's something you probably didn't expect when you tuned in Windows Weekly.
It's not something we do every week.
But no. But we thought maybe just this once.
Sometimes.
Paul and Leo's baby name book.
Yeah.
So we're doing this show for those of you watching live on a Friday because, thank you, Paul, you let me take a day off. But it kind of coincided with your own schedule because you had just flown back.
From Tech Ed, from Atlanta. And if we had done this yesterday, it would have been a basket case. Yeah. In fact, I not really appreciating how tired I was. I got home and ate lunch and then slept for the entire afternoon. So it's probably best.
Well, I'm glad that you're feeling fine and I'm fine. And now we are going to talk about Windows.
Yes, we are.
And that'll cheer us up immensely.
I hope it does.
How was Tech Ed?
It was really good, actually. It's funny because there were no major product announcements per se, and I'm not even sure that Tech Ed is usually a venue for such things, but there was still a lot going on. And in sort of a jaded way, I go into these events thinking, well, I'm not really going to learn anything. I'm up on what Microsoft is doing. But I actually found out a few things at Tech Ed and that I didn't really know much about, to my delight. So it was good. I mean, it was a busy week. It was a long week. And yeah, it was good.
Well, good. We'll talk about that in great and frankly exhausting detail in a moment.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask you about your campaign, because you asked people to help you. You wanted 10 ways that Microsoft could fix Microsoft, as if it were broken, Paul Thurrott.
Well, by the way, that's absolutely one consideration. Maybe Microsoft isn't broken. Maybe the people who whine and moan about Microsoft needing to do this or that should just shut up and get on with their lives. And certainly I can fall into that category pretty easily. So I try to admit that up front. But this campaign, as you call it, was not the first time I've reached out for help per se, but I asked last week on this podcast, I asked on Twitter, if you were going to fix Microsoft, I mean, what would you recommend? Hundreds of responses later, I tried to collect what I thought were the best ones.
I like it that you did it on Twitter, too, because that means they were short. 140 characters.
Sure. And for whatever it's worth, I mean, for people who follow my stuff, certainly I could take a topic like this and beat it to death and write, 30,000 words or something. And I tried not to do that, although it's still a pretty long document. And I wanted to keep it down to 10, but ultimately it worked out to be about 16 suggestions, as I call them. Some of them are contradictory. I mean, the idea isn't Microsoft needs to do all of these things and then it's going to be fine on the other side. It means, well, here's some ideas. Maybe we can mix and match between some of these, and hopefully these will be good ideas or whatever. But I thought it was interesting. Some people had very specific product requests, and that's not what this was about, right? Microsoft needs to change the file system in Windows 8. Okay, maybe. But that's a different conversation. That's not really what I care about. I'm talking about big picture strategy things, right? Microsoft is a business. And for the people who would argue that Microsoft generates a lot of money and they're a very big company and they're in no danger of not being a big revenue generating company, I would say, yeah, fair enough. Absolutely. But what I'm talking about is more along the lines of the consumer-facing products that generate news and buzz and are exciting and interesting and fun, and less along the lines of the IBM-style, services and all that kind of junk.
Although there may be more money in that. I mean, let's face it, right?
Absolutely.
It's just not as interesting.
No, this isn't, Microsoft's going to fail. It's that Microsoft is losing the interest of the technology enthusiasts, yes, and arguably of general consumers as well. That's what this is about. I look at big parts of Microsoft, including the stuff that would have been on display this past week at Tech Ed, and that stuff is all enormously successful. There's no doubt about it. Their business software, their servers, and increasingly their online services are really impressive, really impressive. And also, I should point out, one of the complaints I've made about Microsoft with regards to different parts of this business, Windows or Windows Phone, is that the company moves too slowly, right? And I think that is still true. It is true for consumers. But when you look at businesses, Microsoft is in many ways a very aggressive company. And I think that from both a time to market and then their adoption of new technology standpoint. So this is the perplexing part about Microsoft. It's such a huge company. It has so many different businesses, some of which have absolutely nothing to do with each other. It's hard to look at this thing as a single company, a single thing, because it's so big and so multi-headed and so complex. And that's maybe part of the problem too, right? So that was the point behind this campaign, as you said. And, hopefully it will generate some discussion, at least certainly some debate. I would say on the Microsoft side of the fence, we don't get a lot of those crazy advocacy people that you see more on the Apple or Mac side or on the Linux side. Or whatever, you know how these things go. I mean, in the tech world, we have those certain overzealous types that love to debate every little pedantic point and so forth. But of course, something like this is going to bring those guys out of the woodwork, even on the Microsoft side, and they do exist. And it's very interesting to me that they're out there, and they're amusing and sad in some ways. But Microsoft still generates interest, and that's something that we're going to see very soon as the Windows 8 stuff starts evolving and becoming more public, right? When Microsoft has this event this September, I think you're going to see the Windows 8 news cycle is going to explode. People are still very interested in Microsoft. So it's not like they've fallen off of a cliff, but there's no doubt, too, that companies like Apple and Google, and by the way, Facebook and a lot of these online companies are generating a lot more hype and buzz these days. And I think that's the type of thing I was looking at. How can we fix that?
Well,
how would you fix Microsoft, Leo?
All I can say is get rid of that son of a gun, Steve Ballmer.
Yep.
Did you see the...
Yeah.
We didn't talk about last week. We talked about could Ballmer be the problem, and then interestingly, in the interim, somebody posted an article about the Microsoft's stock price. Now, admittedly, the stock price isn't the only way to judge a company.
Really? Because it's one of the primary ways. But yeah,
it's not the only way. Look, I'm trying to give him some credit here.
It's not the only way. No, it's not the only way. That's true.
But it certainly reflects the common. And by the way, all of these things about making Microsoft more sexy are really about improving the stock price as much as anything else. But
yeah, right. So obviously, market cap. We know because it was a big news story last year when Apple surpassed Microsoft's market cap. That's all based on stock price.
Right.
So Apple's market valuation, if you will, has skyrocketed in a decade in which Microsoft's has basically stood still.
So this story was, somebody did some calculation. It says that since Steve Ballmer has been CEO, Microsoft's value has gone down. Was it 56%?
Sure.
I mean, I know stock is not the only measure of success, but if I'm the CEO of a company, a publicly held company, and my stock?
Yeah. So when you look at Microsoft from any perspective and you say, well, how would you change this company? I mean, ultimately, no matter which very specific thing you suggest, the reason it's not happening always has to come back to the CEO. I mean, eventually the buck has to stop somewhere, and that's where, I like Steve Ballmer. That's what makes this hard. People have been debating this issue for a couple of years now, and I've always tried to, I don't mean remain above it, but kind of remain outside of it. I've tried not
get sucked in by it.
Yes, opine on this particular issue, because one of the problems with replacing a guy like Steve Ballmer, even though it's a lesser problem than, say, replacing someone like Bill Gates, which is a very serious problem, is that it's hard to find anyone out there who makes sense. It's easy to say and cheap to say, let's just get rid of the bum and that will fix all these problems. It doesn't fix any problems. It introduces its own set of problems.
I did a search for Steve Ballmer's stock price, and I found an article from the San Jose Mercury News from 2005, from 6 years ago, in which Ballmer told shareholders on Wednesday that Microsoft measures its success by its products, not its share price. He kind of gave you a heads up, kids.
Well, Microsoft, in other words, I measure, because when I measure it the other way, it looks bad.
He said, this is 2005.
I bring up this comparison every time I hear something like that, which is the phrase, cold hands, warm heart. Who do you think came up with that phrase? Someone with really cold hands, Leo. So, right? And that's the thing. I mean, right? I mean, that's, you can see how that sort of factors into that sort of decision. We don't worry about this.
Byron is saying something interesting in the chat room. I'd like to actually kind of get your thought on this. He says the vast majority of Apple's profit came from products that did not exist a few years ago. Meanwhile, Microsoft's profit really comes from products invented in the 80s. Is that the case?
Yes, it is. And this is the problem, actually, as I see it, right? And in fact, one of the suggestions is about starting over, To get a little specific into a product type thing, I would say that this week Apple celebrated their 10th anniversary for the retail stores.
Yep.
If you go back and look at the original vision for those stores, it was ludicrous. It was all about the Mac. It was all Mac stuff. It was third-party hardware products that could plug into Macs. It was the stupidest looking thing in the world. And there's an interesting bit of history rewriting that occurs now where all the pundits said that this thing was going to fail. If you look at Apple's original plan, it was absolutely going to fail. It was ridiculous.
I said it was going to fail. I said, look at what Gateway has done with its stores. Gateway was closing its stores right when Apple in 2001 was opening its stores.
Yes, but Apple's, Apple's original plan, their problem at the time was that they felt people didn't buy Macs because they never had any hands-on experience.
They couldn't see them. Yeah.
And if they could just get their hands on them, people would buy them.
Well, that wasn't wrong.
Well, except for one thing. So 10 years later, they still have less than 5% of the computer market. But the reason Apple's stores have taken off really is because of the devices, the iPods and then the iPhones, and now the iPads.
And Apple's business
that's
in
selling,
general.
right?
Yeah.
Apple's business in general is based on those things. And that's the products he was talking about that make up the majority of Apple's revenues. That shows there's a lot that shows, but Apple's ability to get rid of old technology very quickly and adopt new technology. Apple's pure vision, the ability to see where the market's going and then guide it in that direction. These are things we used to associate with Microsoft. You know, the majority of Microsoft's revenues, I wrote something about this some time ago, and I don't have this figure in front of me, but it was something like 85% comes from legacy products, that are in many ways decades old. And I'm talking about things like Windows on both the client and the server, and of course Microsoft Office. And then in Xbox 360 is somewhere very, very small in there as well. But these are products that have been around for a long time, legacy products. That is the problem, right? That Microsoft's success, and you know, their not their success so much, but their revenues are all based on these legacy products. Microsoft has failed almost every time it's tried to emulate the PC model, the Windows model in other markets. It hasn't failed in places where it makes sense. So, for example, when you go from Windows to Windows Server, it makes sense that those things are very closely related, so that the basic business model there would work, you know, on the other end. You know, something like Office makes sense. It's traditional software like Windows. So those businesses have all done well. But with rare exception, when it's worked outside the box or tried to emulate, you know, its old business model, it hasn't worked for Microsoft. You know, Xbox 360 maybe is the one big exception to all that.
But isn't that historically the hardest thing in the world for a company to do, is to reboot itself and come up with the next big thing? I mean, that's very hard to do.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, right? So it's not just new products. It's not just new markets. It's things like branding, you know? It's things like product positioning.
They're terrible at marketing and branding, I have to say.
Absolutely terrible, yeah. The sad thing for Microsoft is they try. You know, they don't get a lot of credit for it. People always point to those crazy names, you know, Microsoft, blah, 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 Server 2011, second edition, whatever it is. You know, the 137 character long Microsoft product name, and we all laugh because we have all seen those product names. But the truth is, Microsoft has tried branding. It's done things like Xbox and Zune and Bing. And the truth is, most of the time, those brands actually fail. You know, branding isn't just important, it's hard. And it's something that Microsoft hasn't always done correctly. You know, Apple's product names are not exactly, you know, innovative or interesting in any way. It's always I something, right. You know. It seems to have worked out.
But at least it's not a number.
Right. Well, look at a PC company like HP and the way that they name their machines. Or Toshiba does this too, where it's a series of numbers, a dash, and then another series of numbers, or some convoluted combination of letters and numbers.
Such a simple thing. And yet I think the reason they do it is if they were to say the new HP Thunder Pack, people would mock it as not serious. And I think that the problem with making a business PC is it needs to be perceived as serious. That's why they called it not FireWire, but IEEE 1394. Even after Apple said it's okay to call it FireWire, we won't charge you a fee, because it was more business-like.
Okay.
I think that's why.
Fair enough. There are absolutely reasons why, but it doesn't change the fact that these names are terrible.
It's not sexy.
You can look at names or product versioning conventions. Microsoft has largely moved to a year-based numbering scheme.
Yeah.
I remember when they did this, they talked about how people are familiar with this from automobiles, that I drive a 2010 Camry or whatever. It's very, people understand what that means.
Of course, there's a new Camry every year, so it kind of makes sense.
Well, that's the thing, and that was actually my argument that at that very day was, well, if you intend to make a new version of Windows every year, I believe you, then this is a good idea. But if you don't, you get into a situation where you're running Windows 2000 in 2003,
right?
And it makes you look behind,
right?
Whereas if you were saying I was running Windows 5.0,
right,
you would never have that conversation or mentality about the product name.
Now, see, that seems obvious.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Why? Here you are, you're suggesting this. How come they can't see it?
Well,
or are they having this conversation and then making a decision? I mean, I just don't understand.
Okay, so when this started, basically with Windows 95, right? I think at the time there was a great case to be made that Microsoft was still a powerhouse with consumers, and that Windows 95, of course, was a huge consumer product. So there was a lot of excitement around that.
It was indeed.
So I think that their thinking along that time frame would have been that this is how we resonate. This is one of the ways that we can resonate with consumers. In other words, it is consumers who know from buying cars that this is how things are numbered. So this is why that makes sense. To businesses, not only do they not care, it might actually be a negative. I think businesses would rather see version numbers.
Right.
Maybe I'm oversimplifying, but in the years since, you can rattle off the number of big consumer successes that Microsoft has had on, well, probably one finger actually, because there haven't been many. As somebody noted to me, either in an email or maybe on Twitter, Windows is a huge success story, absolutely no doubt about it. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of copies, billions really, of all versions together sold. But people don't go buy Windows, and they don't seek out Windows. They buy PCs, and they do it because it's compatible with what they have at work, or it's compatible with the applications that they already know and use. No one is really buying Windows, not directly. And that these things don't matter to businesses anyway. So it's weird that they would spend so much effort trying to, drum up excitement for this consumer stuff. I mean, how confusing must it be to a business that there are two media players with the Windows logo on them in Windows 7, and then a third, if you want to throw Zune in the mix, that Microsoft makes? Why do they have all these things? This is crazy. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I don't know, Paul.
So, if I were to pick,
I'm sure that's a rhetorical question. So I won't. Yes, please.
I'd love to hear an answer, but yes. Well, in a recent discussion with the Microsoft,
we figured it all out.
Yeah. So when I look at this list, I mean, I think what I would like to communicate to people that not all of these things are my ideas. I don't actually agree with all of these things. These are more just general discussion points. The things that I do think that Microsoft needs to do, just looking at the list, and again, there are 16 of these points. I mean, I really do feel that Microsoft gets it when it comes to businesses, and that the focus for Microsoft should be on businesses. I think the focus at Microsoft really is on businesses, but I think they explicitly just need to admit this to themselves and forget about all this consumer baloney, because it never really amounts to anything for them. And I think that would solve a lot of problems. We have spent on this podcast a lot of time comparing Apple and Microsoft over the past couple of years, because Apple has been surging with consumers and Microsoft has not. And a lot of people will say, well, why do you even compare these companies? The reason we compare them is because Microsoft compares them too. Right. Microsoft it's got this Apple bug that they can't shake. I would like to see Microsoft just say, forget it. There are other companies that just do a better job at those people. Why are we even bothering? I mean, people who are so-called consumers will continue to use Microsoft products for individuals, Windows and Office and so forth. But, claiming that Office is a product for consumers is sort of ludicrous. You do it to get things done. It's a productivity app. It, by nature, is a business app. I mean, it's just a business app. It's fine. There's no, bad reputation to be had because it's a business app. Just admit it. Just admit it, and that's what you're going after. By the way, once you define your market that way, they're winning big time. They look great. So that's one thing. I would look at the simplification stuff. We've talked about this a lot. In simplification in products, simplification in branding, simplification in corporate hierarchy. Microsoft is a big company that can't make decisions quickly, can't move quickly. We're still waiting for those tablets, Leo. Remember last year was the year of the tablet. This year, okay, seriously, it will be this year. And, seriously, maybe it will be next year. We don't know.
I wouldn't rush it.
I wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. Don't hold your breath.
The buzzsaw's waiting. It'll be there next week, next year, next month. Just, take your time.
There are examples contrary to this, but by and large, Microsoft doesn't move quickly enough. Again, unless you just admit it's a business company, and then they're moving along just fine.
Right.
That's a big thing. I think that there's some weirdness around such things as copying products and designs, which Microsoft and Apple have both accused each other of over the years, and also acquisitions. In other words, we are not succeeding in this market. If we want to be in it, the way to succeed is to buy one of the big players and just integrate that stuff into our business. Microsoft actually has a rich history of doing both of those things. And I think they were almost embarrassed by it, as if copying something that someone else is doing right is in any way a bad thing. I think that's just good business. And as if buying a software company for a product or technology or even people is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a great way to get into a market very quickly. A lot of iconic Microsoft products from today were purchases. We just forget, PowerPoint is a good example of that, where, what you think Microsoft invented PowerPoint? They purchased this company a long time ago. Now it's a full-fledged, we don't think anything of it. It's one of Microsoft's biggest products. Stuff like that is okay. The whole Redmond start your photocopier business, was like a way to, as if they were somehow calling out Microsoft on something that they had never done, they being Apple in this case. I mean, it's ludicrous. Both these companies copy each other fairly routinely. Don't be embarrassed by that. The good ideas don't all happen in-house. So feel free to look externally. I also think, for all of the junk around this Skype purchase, which I think we all sort of agree, even though maybe we all don't understand the implications, that it was very expensive, too expensive. The thing I like about it is there's Microsoft at least being aggressive. They're sticking their neck out. They're doing something that a lot of other companies can't do just simply because it's very expensive. And they're sort of sending an aggressive message, even if this was about Facebook. Let's say that was the only reason they bought it. We don't want Facebook to have Skype. Well, you know what? That's kind of a cool thing for Microsoft to do right there. That's a nice competitive move. I think they should do more of that stuff. They should buy Twitter. They should buy Adobe. They should buy whatever companies they can afford that are doing well in areas that Microsoft is not. And they should spend every cent they have. They've been sitting on this cash for the past decade and doing nothing with it. For the price of what they were going to pay for Adobe, they could probably buy all of those companies.
and the entire music industry.
And RIM and Nokia maybe eventually. I mean, why not?
All.
Oh, absolutely buy them all.
Well, there are regulatory issues. I don't.
Well, maybe not anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe not anymore. Go ahead.
By the way, buy them all until there are regulatory issues.
Right.
Buy them all.
And if you can't, and if you have regulatory issues, buy an FCC commissioner, and it'll be fine.
Everyone's doing it, Leo.
Everyone's doing it. No big deal. Just offer him a job.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. Paul Thurrott is here, and we are talking about his article at the SuperSite for Windows, winsupersite.com, on how Microsoft could fix Microsoft. 16 viewer and reader and listener suggested ways to replace Microsoft or fix or reboot. I guess reboot's the word I was looking for.
Reboot's a good term. Yeah.
Reboot Microsoft. Tech Ed Review coming up in just a little bit. There's some interesting news about Intel versus ARM in the mobile space, and Windows, of course, is a big part of this. In fact, Intel, well, we'll see. I'd like to hear what you think about the FUD Intel.
It's like Godzilla and King Kong going at it.
Yeah, just stay out of there. Stay out of the way, villagers.
I mean, enjoy watching it, but just don't get trampled.
Don't get trampled. But while we talk about that, or before we talk about that, let's talk a little bit about our friends at Citrix, the makers of the great GoToAssist Express, a great tool. Really, really useful tool for people who are in the support business. One of the real challenges of support, of course, is being effective, being efficient, without trampling your users. And frankly, it's no fun for anybody, including your users, to spend time on the phone saying, click the start menu. Okay, see that where it says run? Click that. Okay, now I'm going to say something. I want you to type it exactly as I say it. No, you don't want to get in that business. What you really want to do, you want to do, is just reach your fingers out, reach your hands out in through the phone line and fix the computer. And that's what your user wants. Your user just wants to get it fixed. GoToAssist Express makes that possible. And even if your user doesn't have it installed, by the way, you put it on your system right now. In fact, you do it for 30 days, free for 30 days. GoToAssist.com. Let me see what the URL is. /Windows. But now that's deceptive because it works on Windows or Mac. GoToAssist.com/Windows. Install it. And then the next time you get that support call, whether it's from a customer, a client, a colleague, a family, a friend, all you have to do is say, okay, here's a link. You could actually tell them the link over the phone. You say, visit GoToAssist.com, and here's the ticket number. They enter that in, press a button. It installs the software. Now, it does this each time, by the way, very quickly, about 30 seconds. And the reason is it always has the latest software. This is for security reasons, and it really works well. Never been a security problem with GoToAssist Express. So they'll have the software. Now you can say, okay, I got it from here. You can chat with them. They can watch. You can chat with them as you're fixing stuff. You can show them your machine So if you want to say, does it look like, this is what it's supposed to look like, that kind of thing, this is good for training and things like that. But it also has additional features. It's based, of course, on the great Citrix remote accesses, but it's got additional features for support. Unattended support is possible. So once your customer's installed it and you say, okay, from now on, I'd like to be able to get in there, and they say, okay, you don't have to wait. They could say, hey, I got a problem, and you say, I'll take care of it overnight at your leisure. 8 sessions at the same time. I don't have to tell you why that's great. I mean, you start an install on one or a fix or a scan or whatever, and you move to the next. Makes you much more efficient. You can get a complete assay of not only the operating system version, but any software running in the background, including security software. You can see and solve the problem fast. It is, believe me, this is well worth it. They have day passes, but you're probably going to want the monthly subscription. I'm going to give you the monthly subscription for 30 days right now. If you visit gotoassist.com/Windows. 30 days free. Gotoassist.com/Windows. If you support people on computers, Mac or Windows, this is the one you've got to have. Go to Assist Express from Citrix. I've just visited my Twitter, and they have the suggestions for who to follow these days, and I noticed that they're suggesting that I follow the Dalai Lama and Charlie Sheen. So I
is it just for the well-rounded
together at last?
Yeah.
I think I'll get karmic redemption and winning,
and right, and some other kind of redemption.
Is Charlie Sheen done yet?
Yeah, I think he's done this.
Oh God, thank God. Now this is the new meme. I don't know if you've seen this one. This is just this was on Boing Boing. I think it was yesterday. This is the in the Ukrainian Parliament, the vice speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament. Let me see if I can launch this for you. Choking the one of the deputies because he wanted to speak and he didn't want to let him. And he actually chokes him in the Parliament. How many times have I wanted to do that?
Yep.
Nope. In fact, there's now video. This is the funniest video. Look over in the... Oh, look, what? He throws him right over the bench. Can you see it? He's throwing him right over the bench. Boom, bye.
Some people are not ready for democracy. You know what I'm saying? I don't Listen, I disagree with people. I guess I occasionally would like to strangle people, but I mean, really?
That's the funniest thing I've ever seen. I could just see. I think we're going to see some internet memeing around there.
Choking.
It's a new internet. You got to watch when these things happen. You got to watch because they're going to spread like wildfire around the internet.
That's good.
Yeah, the Ukrainian Parliament. That's the place you want to be. Wait, one more time. I think the video is better on this here. Let me play the video. And this is from boingboing.net if you want to read it. Waiting for cache, buffering. I hate internet video.
I don't know why people doubt cloud computing.
Buffering, waiting. All right, never mind. Forget I even said anything. Moving right along.
Okay.
Topic 2. You want to talk about Tech Ed at all, or have we kind of hit the...
Yeah, we should talk about this.
All right. So first of all, what is Tech Ed?
Tech Ed is Microsoft's annual trade show for IT pros and developers. It's about 7,500 people. It was held this year in Atlanta, which has one of the biggest airports I've ever seen, as well as one of the biggest trade show convention halls I've ever seen. This place was, I've been to Vegas and I've been to New Orleans, both of which are humongous. There was something about this place. And it seemed like they purposely scheduled events and meetings so that you would always have to walk between the buildings. It was like a 13-mile hike every time you had to do anything.
That's great.
Our feet were, we were just dying by the end of this thing. It was really a lot of work just walking around. It seemed, as a result, it seemed bigger than it was from a attendee standpoint. If you'd asked me, how many people do you think are here? I would have said, I don't know, 30,000. It just seemed huge, But we had a reviewers workshop on Sunday morning and throughout the day Sunday, and then Sunday night my company hosted a Microsoft pre-con, like a pre-convention session, I guess, if you will, about cloud computing. That was kind of interesting because we had split up into 2 groups, and I was co-running the IT Pro version. So some of my buddies were over on the other side doing the developer track. And the differences between the two are very striking. So, for example, on the developer side, you talk about cloud computing, and to these guys, it's the biggest opportunity in the world. It's another thing to learn, but it's a new business. It's like, this is more stuff for us to do. It's great. And then on the IT pro side, it was like a funeral, because these guys are thinking, my business is going to go to Exchange hosted in the cloud, and then I'm not going to have a job anymore. And it was mostly about, it was like, managing people who are experiencing a loss. It was almost sad, It was a very strange thing. But anyway, obviously, if you're an IT pro, you're in IT. I mean, you understand that the business is ever changing, and that this is absolutely one of the biggest changes of all time. It's not like going from NT to Windows 2000. I mean, this is a big change. But hopefully, people are prepared for this and are keeping their training up to date and so forth. But it was kind of interesting.
Well, it just sounds, tech ed sounds like something I'd like to go to. It sounds serious.
It is serious.
It sounds like a good conference. I like developer conferences. I loved Google I/O. I don't ever get really invited to go behind the scenes at WWDC, which is Apple's developers conference. This sounds like this the third of the trio.
Right. They're not directly comparable, but they're the big events of those three companies, right? So it's interesting how they position themselves, right? I'm going to be curious to see what Apple says about this next iPhone and when it's going to come out, because it's not going to be like in years past where it was going to come out within 30 days of the announcement. So I'm going to be curious to see what that's like. But on the Microsoft side, there was no big new product announcement. They didn't announce Windows 8 or say anything about Windows 8, for example. There was nothing like that. But what you kind of get from what I got from Tech Ed was just a clear sense of where Microsoft has its tendrils, which is everywhere, and that Microsoft is alone of say it and Google and then other companies that compete in these online services in offering not just all the on-premises servers you could ever want, for those people that need things on-premises, not just the hosted services, people who need things like Google Apps or Office 365 or pure hosted services, but also that hybrid model, which we've talked about before, where you can have some combination of both, right? There are places and businesses where for regulatory or legal reasons, you can't have data up in someone else's data center or up in some data center that's in a different country or whatever it may be. And Microsoft actually addresses all of those needs. They have all these different ways of doing things. And I think that stuff is very interesting. So I really do think that it's just the combination of things that really makes what Microsoft offers very, very interesting. So some good stuff there. I learned some things about products I didn't know much about. For example, Multipoint Server, which is a really cool product for education and a way to basically string a bunch of screens and keyboards and mice off of a single computer and essentially having a lab full of what appears to be multiple computers, but they're all running off of the same box, using terminal server technology, and very, very cheap. So instead of spending 20 or 30 grand on a lab, you could spend $3,000 or $4,000 and have the same functionality. Really, really cool. They talked about Small Business Server and combining it with Office 365 and how that add-in is going to look and how that's going to be a seamless experience. Very cool. Stuff like that. So it was a good show.
Good show, man. Good show. Jolly good.
I should also point out, I did some video interviews, and one of them was with Microsoft technical fellow Mark Brzezinovich, one of the smartest guys at Microsoft, one of the smartest guys in our industry. And he had moved about a year and a half ago, I think it was, from the Windows client team or the core Windows team to Azure, the Microsoft's hosted platform in the sky. Windows Azure and SQL Azure. And he was, in the interview I did with him, I asked him, from a kind of a platform perspective, what's the big difference? I mean, obviously this thing's up in the cloud, but it's not like Microsoft took Windows Server and just threw it up in the cloud. I mean, you have to make, it's different, right? There are different concerns. I mean, what makes Windows Azure different from Windows Server? What makes it better? And he said something that really kind of finally clicked with me, because I have to tell you, I've had a real mind block with a lot of this stuff over the years. He was saying that the big difference, and speaking very generally, was that Windows Azure could never go down. It can't not be available. So they had to re-architect this thing so that it was completely componentized, and that all of these components were distributed, and that what they would do is the way they update this thing, which they update it on a continual basis, is they update one of the instances of the component while they push everyone who's using it over to one of the other instances of the component. So to the users, Windows Azure never goes down. It's just never down. So they update these things. These components are all updated discreetly, not just the components themselves, but the instances of the components. The effective downtime to the users is 0, right? Compare this with Windows 7, where you get an update almost every single day, most of which require you to reboot your computer. You know, my computer is offline, if you will, some part of the day, at least a couple of times a week. That's how Windows is today. You know, it's just sort of the accepted norm. But when you move to this cloud model, you need to have, 100% availability, essentially, or, what they guarantee 99.95 availability. And of course, there are other factors when you talk about cloud computing, your broadband provider and so forth could all go down and all that kind of stuff. But from Microsoft's perspective, the actual server, the service, Windows Azure, that thing needs to be available all the time. And so far it has been. So it's just an interesting thing. And I know that people are, there'll always be the kind of chicken little people who are worried about the cloud and, oh, we can't do that. We have to pay this for that and, whatever. But I find it very interesting that there's a real architectural advantage to this that goes beyond just, well, your stuff will be available from anywhere. It's also a more technically reliable and technically interesting system, if you will, a technically superior system.
Azure. Would you ever find out if it's Azure?
Yeah, I pronounced it 6 different ways as I talked. Azure. Azure. I'm sure it's Azure.
I still wish they'd call it aubergine, but okay.
Yeah. Well, one more thing I should say, because people have asked about this. Microsoft completed Windows Home Server 2011 and Small Business Server 2011 Essentials about a month ago, I think it was, or maybe 2 months ago even. And I get a lot of questions about when the new server hardware is going to show up. When can you buy these things? And in both cases, I was told that end of May, beginning of June, which I take to mean middle of July, these things will become available en masse. And I assume, and I wasn't told this, they wouldn't really talk about this, but I assume at that time as well that the OEM versions of that software will appear. What that means is that you can go to a place like Newegg and buy the OEM version of Windows Home Server, which is what a lot of enthusiasts do, so that you can install the software on your own hardware, right, on like a PC box or whatever.
Well, that's cool. Would you recommend that? I mean, or is it just for trial purposes?
Yeah, so that is actually what I'm doing right now. But the reason I'm doing it is I really don't know a lot about what this hardware is going to look like. We know that HP is out of the market, right, as far as Windows Home Server goes. Oddly enough, HP has an incredible collection of small business server essentials based machines coming, but that makes sense within their HP is more of a business PC maker and so forth. But they're not doing Windows Home Server. But we know that there are going to be other companies, Acer and so forth, they're going to be making Windows Home Server 2011 specific boxes. So I don't really have any real news about those or what they're going to look like or when they're going to be here. But well, I do know when they're going to be, late May, early June or whatever. But I guess I would just wait and see what those things look like. For the first generation of Windows Home Server, I had those the various HP boxes. I went through a couple of different generations of those, and I love the form factor and all that kind of stuff. I think for this version, because of the way it's structured and because of the way things are going, frankly, even the huge tower that I'm currently using in some ways isn't enough, because what you're really looking for is the ability to plug in as many drives as you can, because you want to have not just the drive for the drives for the data, but also drives for server backup, right? And then separately from the drive space, you want the ability to back up to the cloud and so forth. So, entire PC works fine, or any PC would work fine. But I know some people are actually even virtualizing it for some reason. But yeah, you never know. Hopefully there'll be some HP style excellent Windows Home Server box. I just don't know yet.
Well, they did it though, and did they stop doing it, and now they're going to do it again? I mean, are you saying they'll bring it back?
No, HP has announced that they're not doing Windows Home Server 2011, but what they are doing is Small Business Server 2011 Essentials, which of course is based on the Windows Home Server code base and so forth. So,
maybe they just decided there wasn't a home user market for it, or you know what? They didn't want to support it.
I don't really think there's a huge market for Windows Home Server, frankly. But as anyone who uses it will tell you, and I am one of those people, It is absolutely fantastic, and I do recommend it strongly. I love it.
Have you tried the other kind of like Unix-based home server NAS style?
No, and no, and I never.
That's not your thing. Because there's quite a few. I mean, I've tried a few.
No, of course there are, but I mean, ultimately, these things are Linux boxes, and I have zero interest in that. That's crazy.
That's crazy. That's crazy talk.
Crazy talk.
Why would anybody ever want to do that?
I can't even believe you mentioned it.
Well, one of the advantages of them is they'll run on these cheap little Marvell-based plug things like Tonito and stuff.
Look, I think the OEM version of Windows Home Server will cost all of $100 or something.
Really?
It will run on, it will run on whatever PC box you have already. So as you upgrade, to a new Windows 7 machine or whatever, you can repurpose this as a home server box. It's really not that big of a deal. And storage costs nothing these days. You can get these 2 terabyte drives for $69 at on Amazon or whatever. So there you go. I mean, there's almost no reason not to do it these days. I mean, the trick is, like I said, getting a box where you can have enough storage, because you want to duplicate things through server backup, and then of course you also have to figure out a cloud strategy for backup.
I just like dicking around with stuff, and so when you do it, you roll your own. Yep. You spend years.
Well, but okay,
hours and hours and hours messing with this stuff to get it to work, and it's so much fun.
Yeah, okay. I mean, well, no,
it's a hobbyist thing. It's a hobbyist.
No, I listen. I'm with you. I get it. Yeah. Except for one thing, this is your crucial data. In my case, what's on my home server is not just all of my family's digital photos, which is all of our photos, from dating back to 2000 or whatever year we switched over. Not just every single music and video file that I own, but all of my work-related files dating back to 1994 or 5 or whatever year it was. I mean, it's
not your only backup, though, is it?
No, but that's my point. In other words, you want this data to be duplicated, but it's the central storage for all of it.
Right.
It's the central
that's true.
point.
I use a NAS for that, but I do use a Linux NAS for that.
Yeah, right. Okay. So there are
and then I play with the plug stuff.
Yeah.
Like a Mahi. I love a Mahi.
You love what?
Never mind. I'm just throwing it out there for anybody who's listening, who's curious what I'm talking about.
Putting letters together to make fake words. Look,
it's a kind of sushi.
Windows Home Server has its own remote access stuff, which is great. I have trouble getting that to work because of the weird router that I have. So I use things like LogMeIn Hamachi to do that.
Hamachi's cool. Another good kind of sushi.
Okay, but what this means to me though is when I'm at TechEd, this is one of those beautiful things. I can do what I do at home, which is I create documents for articles on my PC, and I have all my work-related files. I create the graphics and all that stuff. When I complete a document of that kind, when I've published the article to the website, I have to get rid of it. I have to get rid of all those things, and I put them in a folder, and I move them up to the server, and then it just sits there. I don't really need it again, hopefully, but sometimes you have to go back and look at whatever. But I have all this stuff, dating back a decade or whatever or more. That's what's on my home server. But when I'm on the road, because of this Hamachi VPN, I can do exactly the same thing. In the old days, I would come back with a laptop from a trip, and I would have to spend some huge amount of time copying the files that I had created while I was on the road, either to a external drive, which I would then plug into whatever computer, or in more recent years, just over the network directly. And you would spend time managing this stuff that was part of the trip. You got back and you weren't done. But when I came back from this trip, I was completely done. There's nothing extraneous on my laptop that I have to go file. It's all already been filed because I had network connectivity. And as far as my computer was concerned, I was connected to the local network, even though I was in Atlanta.
Yeah, no, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I think that's just awesome. Yeah.
Yep. So unlike the stuff you were talking about, this is a good use.
This works.
Yeah, it works, right. Right. I mean, you can play all you want, but I'm just saying this is your crucial data. I mean, make sure, if you're going to play with it, make sure it's a copy.
Okay. All right. You win. Hey, let's take a break, come back. We're going to talk finally about that Intel dishing on Windows 8. And you've got some Mango news. There's a little Mango Tango coming up in just a little bit. But first, Netflix.com/twit. That's the place I want to send everybody to. I have received the numbers, and I have now confirmed my initial concern, which is that every single one of you who wanted to be a Netflix customer already is. So we appreciate your support. And now I'm changing the pitch up. Sign up. Get your friends and family to sign up. We know, if you're listening to a show like Windows Weekly or frankly anything on the TWiT network, you're already a Netflix customer. You know, either you already are or you've decided you don't want to be. But it's certainly nothing you don't know about. Netflix is that great DVD by mail system. You get your DVDs prepaid, return mailer, and the next one comes in as little as one business day. It's just fantastic. Great movies like The King's Speech, Lawrence of Arabia, The Pianist, documentaries that you won't see in the theater, classics like The Graduate. These are all available by disc, but then there's this new Watch Instantly feature. Maybe you don't know about. I don't know. Perhaps you don't know about that, where many of these same movies are available to watch instantly. There's something like 169 Family Guys on here. So whenever I'm sitting down with the family and we want to watch a TV show, there's 10 years of Family Guys episodes on here. It's just awesome. I don't know. You probably think I'm crazy for letting my kids watch the Family Guy, but
I think you're crazy for letting people see your actual Netflix queue.
We're off on the road to Bali. Netflix is just fantastic. But see, here's the deal. I know you already know about it. So would you do me a favor? Tell mom, tell dad, tell sis and brother, all the people in your work and the people who might not know about the best way, forget the video store. The best way to watch movies, not only get the discs, but to watch instantly is Netflix. And tell them to go to netflix.com/twit for a 30-day trial. They don't probably know about that. 30 days free. Give it a try. The Netflix recommendations are fantastic because they you rate the movies you've seen, and then it says, based on your interest in that, your taste preferences created this row, critically acclaimed documentaries. Because I watch a lot of documentaries on Netflix, and then this gives you these are things you can all watch right now. Ooh, In the Shadow of the Moon, the history of the Apollo program. Now that sounds awesome. Looks like disc only, but that's okay. I'll put that on the disc list. I still have the discs. I've been saying up to 5 discs. I didn't know there's an 8-disc subscription.
Yikes.
8 discs. I wouldn't do that. Ooh, the original Emmanuel. Remember that? Not for the children. Not for the children. Bread and Tulips. What a classic that is. Some fantastic. Those are the. Oh, look, sci-fi. Lord of the Rings. Gold member. Yeah, baby. Hot Tub
Every
Time
James
Machine.
Bond movie ever made is in there.
Which one is that?
Everyone. All of them.
Oh,
all
everyone.
The James Bond movies.
I thought you said the greatest one. Yeah, I know. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
It's funny because whenever I like they have different selection suggestions, and there's one for like undersea dramas. I don't know why. And it's got Waterworld and Thunderball. I must have watched. I think I watched Jaws. Anyway,
I was going to say I'd have a hard time coming up with 5 of those, but
I know. I love it. Netflix.com/twit. Look.
But the entire Battlestar Galactica
The
series.
entire series.
Coincidentally, I just started rewatching that on this very service.
I am going to watch it right from the beginning again.
Yeah.
This is, it's been long enough. It's been a year. Start over at the beginning. What a great show. Oh, and just this picture. I want this poster. Mm-hmm. I'm a teenage boy once again. This is the Farrah Fawcett poster.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Of the 21st century.
Yep.
Don't you want this on the wall? Well, you can get it on your TV via PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii, Roku box, many new Blu-ray players and DVD as well. Just, in fact, demand Netflix on your next device. Netflix.com/twit. You reminded me. It's time for me to go back and watch the great Battlestar Galactica.
Especially if you've been burned by Caprica,
I did get burned. I bought the first episode. I liked it.
Yeah, it was great. And then it just went, yeah.
All the air went out of that balloon.
Wanted to love it, but.
Wanted to. Was ready to. Didn't.
No.
Join Admiral Adama and the gang as they lead a ragtag fleet of human survivors.
Right.
In search of a mythical planet called Earth. Now, see, I've thought that we lived on a mythical planet, but now I know.
Don't ruin it, Leo.
But beware, the robot race of Cylons is in hot pursuit, and it seems nothing will stop them. Now that's how it should be read.
It's better than he's making it sound.
It's really great. And Tricia Helfer is a goddess.
Yes.
And I just love it when the lights go up and down her back. That's all I can say. Let's move on to Intel. First of all, the backstory. Intel is, of course, dominant on desktops and laptops, but hasn't been able to get any ground on mobile devices. That's where ARM has succeeded. Now ARM is starting to inch into the Intel realm with tablets.
Yes.
And Microsoft fired a shot across Intel's bow saying, we're going to make Windows 8 run on ARM.
Yeah, so that's a big deal, right? You know, Microsoft during the NT days had various versions of Windows that ran on other platforms. But aside from that, and that was a really kind of a short-lived experiment. You know, Windows NT was originally designed to be platform agnostic. That was the deal. But, you know, it basically just all coalesced around the Intel stuff. The
but I
x86
imagine that the portability is still there. In other words, it would be possible for
you know what? I bet it's not as good as what you think.
maybe not.
Well, you know, look, when confronted by the notion of improving the performance, I mean, you're going to use Intel assembler optimizations where you can. I mean, I think there's some work, but regardless of that, as the world is changing and we are moving away from these traditional desktops and laptops to more highly mobile devices, yes, you know, ARM has got a big footprint there. So Intel finally, or ultimately, finds itself on the receiving end of this need by Microsoft to move to these, you know, more mobile platforms. You know, Intel just doesn't have something that can compete, or at least has done well in the market like ARM's chips. So this duopoly that has existed in the marketplace for, I mean, really 30 years, Intel, or 25 years at least, Intel plus Microsoft, right? The so-called Wintel duopoly is threatened by this. So Microsoft made a big splash in CES saying we're going to port Windows 8, the next version of Windows. They didn't call it Windows 8. They hate saying that. But the next version of Windows to ARM. So you have to think that was a bit of a problem over in Intel land.
Shot across the bow.
Yeah, so this week, Intel had their annual investor meeting, and they spoke a little bit about their expectations for Windows on ARM, and they revealed some details, maybe, about that are important and the problems associated with it. So in Intel's words, and I'll have to read this, they said it's really going to be 4 separate ports because there are really different versions of ARM that Microsoft will have to write a different version of Windows 8 for each one of those ports. And if you're going to port any applications over, the assumption here would be that you'd have to port those too, that this is going to be a problem. They also said that the ARM version of Windows would lack a feature that the Intel versions of the x86/x64 versions would have, which is a Windows 7 compatibility mode. Now, that's the first time anyone's ever mentioned something like a Windows 7 compatibility mode for Windows 8. So that was news in a way, assuming it's true. So this thing kind of hung out in the air there for a couple hours, and then Microsoft actually issued a statement in which they said that Intel's discussion about this was, let's see if I get this right, factually inaccurate and unfortunately misleading.
Oh boy.
They said that
was
Microsoft, well, who knows? I mean, we don't know. So, and we don't know which part of what they said was misleading or inaccurate, right? Microsoft says it has been clear about their goals and have emphasized that they are at the technology demonstration stage. As such, we have no further details or information at this time. So that's very unusual. Microsoft has been very quiet about the next version of Windows. You know, they had that one product announcement, but they really don't like to talk about what their plans are. And they have an event planned in September where they will talk about this stuff. But my expectation for Windows 8 goes something like this. I think there is going to be a single ARM version of Windows 8. I think that if you are going to target ARM with a Windows compatible application, which you would do, I'm sure, through Microsoft's normal Visual Studio tools, that you will have one executable that will run on any ARM platform. That's my expectation. I don't really think there are going to be 4 different ones or whatever. I don't think that's true. I think that they're going to offer you a dual mode executable where you can create this thing that either creates the 2 different ones or creates one executable that will run on either platform. I think that that's how that will work. I do believe that not all backwards compatible Windows programs will run on the ARM versions of Windows, but I think that that's okay because one thing Intel hinted at, which I do believe is true, is that the ARM versions are specifically designed for special situations, not for mainstream PCs and laptops, but for this new generation of ultra-mobile devices, like essentially tablets, but also other devices, but primarily tablets. The idea being that on those systems, you will have this Windows Phone style, tile-based UI that's very touch-centric, and that it's designed around that kind of experience. Yes, it will run Microsoft Office if you need it to do that. And of course, when you want to be able to do something like that, hopefully you're connected to a keyboard and a mouse, like a normal computer. And I think it will support that dual mode. But I think that when you're out and about with the tablet, what Microsoft expects is that you'll use it like you use an iPad today. I think that's the plan. Now, this is just speculation on my part, but that's how I sort of see it. So this news of a Windows 7 compatibility mode is kind of interesting. And it makes sense, i.e. that, the ARM versions of Windows won't just run existing apps. Now, if you're a company or a person who's created Windows apps, I think it's going to be very easy to port them to ARM, but I think you may have to port them to ARM in some cases for them to run on ARM versions of Windows 8. So, we'll see how they brand it all. I mean, they also talked about multiple, well, no, that was the bit before. So, this notion that there are going to be multiple versions. Obviously, there are going to be multiple product editions. So it's going to be curious, I'll be curious to see how they brand, these ARM versions of Windows. Hopefully it's not horrible. Hopefully they have a cool name for it, but we'll see.
I like ARM. I think there's something with ARM.
Like
golden ARM.
Yeah, when you think again, I wrote this in
Bond reference, by the way.
The article, yeah. Well, my Apple names Mac OS X by these animal names, right?
Tiger.
Lion and tiger. It's nice. The thing has a version number, right? 10.7 or whatever they're at now. But it's Lion. It's called Lion. That's how people think of it.
Right.
Microsoft had a name like that for a little while. Longhorn, right?
Great name.
But then, great name. They had a technology called Avalon. Great name.
Yeah.
Now Avalon is called essentially Windows Presentation Foundation.
Oh,
Terrible
crap.
name. Terrible name.
WPF.
Yeah. So hopefully they'll do something cool with it.
That's engineer driven, I think.
Yeah, it's terrible.
As opposed to marketing driven. And you know what? We should celebrate. There was a time when I would celebrate engineer driven as opposed to marketing driven.
I always celebrate engineer driven.
Yeah. I don't know what's happened to me. I've turned into a
curmudgeon.
No, the opposite. Like some mainstream, non-geek norm. I've become a straight.
You become a straight.
I'm a normie.
You're like a suit.
I'm a suit. I'm a bean counter.
You're the man.
I'm the man.
Not the good kind of man.
The bad kind of man. Although we all agree that as Web 9457, aptly named, in our chat room says, the best Microsoft name of all time, BPOS.
Right. Well, give them some credit. So the new version of this is Office 365, and that's a fine.
That's a good name.
Yeah.
Let's give them credit. That is a good name.
Business Productivity Online Suite. Are you kidding me?
BPOS.
You are actively telling people not to adopt this. Seriously, just ignore that. Whatever that thing is, pretend it doesn't exist. I don't know.
All right, let's talk about Mango, because we want to get excited about Windows Phone again. Yeah.
So over time, new features about Mango have become unveiled. Next week on Tuesday, Microsoft is going to have a Mango event in New York City. I'll be attending that, at which I expect they will reveal all the consumer-oriented features. So this past week at TECA, they announced some of the new business-oriented features. There have been separate leaks that have gone out as well, which has been very interesting. And so we should discuss this. I need to bring up my
pull up your notes,
because this is a lot of stuff. I should have had this ready.
Take your time.
Yeah,
the world's ending tomorrow anyway.
What's the difference exactly?
What's the difference? No one will ever see this show.
I just told this story when I got into this business. The guy who got me into this business was a teacher, instructor, and he was writing something on the board, and it was a C++ programming class, and someone said, "I don't understand why we have to do this," And without turning to face the crowd, he was writing on the board. He just stopped writing, didn't turn around, but he said, "Why do anything? You're just going to die." And then he just continued writing, and I thought, that is so beautiful.
That's an engineer for you.
That's beautiful.
That's engineering speak. By the way, I'm told by Andrew in our chat room
yes,
that Microsoft's sending actual mangoes in the mail. Did you get your mango yet?
I did not.
There's an actual, to invite you to the event, there are actual mangoes.
So based on the relationship I have now with the Windows Phone,
you're not going to get a mango.
No, I will, but it will be rotted. And
yeah. Why would we send the guy who wrote the book anything?
Yeah, no, of course.
Send him a rotten tomato instead.
Exactly. So what they announced this past week at TechEd was a bunch of new features. So there's going to be a link instant messaging and presence client. So if you can imagine just instant messaging, essentially, that's what that's going to look like. And Link being Microsoft's enterprise or business-oriented communications tool. It's actually not just messaging on the PC. You also get video chat, video conferencing, whiteboard sharing, document application, and desktop sharing, a bunch of other features, phone call integration, all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. But on the phone, it's basically just IM and presence. Office 365 integration into the redesigned Office Hub, which looks awesome. Some nice new email features like Conversation View, which is a feature from the Outlook client. New IT controls, meaning such things as Exchange Active Sync, policy improvements. They don't have everything. I mean, they don't have encryption, but they've added support for complex passwords, I think it was. So that's neat. On the leak side, there have been some guys, Ryan and Travis Loudermilk, who they do the Windows Phone Dev podcast, and they've gotten some amazing information about Mango, which they've shared with me and others. And the most recent revelation included things like Facebook chat and Windows Live Messenger integration into an SMS-style interface on the phone, which, if you think about it, is kind of a cool way to do that, right? You know how text messaging works on a phone. So if you're going to do other things online that are like text messaging, why not just use the same interface, right? Why have a dedicated client? I have a Messenger client over here, an AOL client over here, or whatever, chat client over here, Facebook chat client over here. Why have a bunch of different things? Why not just integrate them all into the same client, messaging client? That's actually a really good idea. So that's going to be part of Mango. Messaging
that kind of fits the overall thrust, it strikes me, as Windows Phone 7, which is collate into hubs various things, because you use all of these kind of simultaneously. It makes perfect sense to collate into a kind of some sort of messaging hub.
Right. Yeah. The iPhone solution, such as it is, would be to have multiple applications for all of those different things. Windows Phone has these hubs where you have one location for all these different things that are related, right? And so that makes a lot of sense. I like that. The Games Hub has been completely redesigned, looks beautiful, and they have an integrated games marketplace now, which is great. They've made some improvements to the lock screen around, when you've got media playing and it goes to the lock screen, you can interact with that and see the album art on the lock screen and all that stuff. So a lot of good stuff. If you spend some time on my Windows Phone secrets blog, you'll see links to the couple of separate revelations that those guys have made, as well as links to their own podcasts, which is good. So you can check all that stuff out. So, Mango is looking great. I mean, for all of the whining and complaining, and I've been a big part of that, of course, about Microsoft's slowness, which is very real. When you look at what they're doing in Mango, I like it, right? I mean, I like what I see. I think the cynical view is, maybe they should have had all this stuff a year ago when they first released the platform. Fair enough. But, at least they're catching up. And it looks like Mango is going to be the release of Windows 7 that we all wanted and hoped for and expected, late last year. So again, there's been a lot of complaining, but I really like what I see coming there. So it looks good.
That's it, huh? Nothing more.
Yeah, that's it.
It looks good. It's a Mango. It's going to be good.
I like it.
I'm sorry, I'm so out of touch. Have they spread to other carriers yet?
Well, yeah. So
have we got the Verizon Windows Phone yet?
Not yet. It's coming next week.
Next week.
So at launch, there were phones on AT&T and T-Mobile, right? Yes. And a month or two ago, there was a Sprint phone. And next week, on the 26th, we're finally getting the Verizon phone. This thing has been sitting, waiting in the wings for months. I mean,
now, unfortunately, it's hard to get real excited about these handsets because they're so similar. Because, to their credit, Microsoft set a kind of a standard, a reference.
Yep.
But I can't say, oh, look, this one's going to have the super duper high Res.
This is not next gen anything. It's
Right.
it's the same.
But it's on Verizon.
It's on Verizon. So the primary selling point of this thing is it's on Verizon. So if you're on Verizon, you've been waiting, the HTC Trophy will be available next week. It doesn't offer anything that isn't available already on these other phones, but there's one on AT&T. The one I'm interested in is coming on. I'm sorry, on Verizon is coming on AT&T on June 5th. And that is an updated version of the HTC HD7, which was previously available in the U.S. only on T-Mobile. The upgraded version is called the HD7S, and I think there are going to be storage allotment choices, if I'm not mistaken. But the big change is apparently the screen. So the HD7 today is the biggest Windows Phone 7 device from a screen standpoint. It's got the biggest screen. It's very similar to the, I think it was called the HD2, which was that Windows Mobile 6.5 phone. It's a big slab, it's the big screen version. But I guess this one has some kind of new screen technology, and I don't know if it's it's been described by some people as being something akin to Gorilla Glass in the sense that you don't need to get a case for it or protect it anyway. It's supposed to be very hardened, and I believe there are going to be some technologies in there that make it appear to be very bright and vibrant, like an OLED type screen, or like the screen on the Samsung Focus, if you're used to that. So I want to see that one. That's one I would consider getting, just to check out something new. I've been using the Focus, since it launched.
Yeah, I'm kind of ready for something else.
Yeah, I mean, on the other hand,
and I like HTC stuff.
Yeah, I do too.
On the other hand, what?
Well, I mean, obviously we've got Mango coming in the fall, and
so should I wait?
Well, that's the thing. So Mango will be accompanied by these second-gen devices. Now,
can I upgrade existing ones to Mango?
Yes. Yeah. Everyone who has a Windows Phone today will get Mango, but these new devices will have some additional hardware features that may not be available on existing phones. For example, like a compass, is one of the ones that could be. Now, not everyone will implement a compass, but it's a possibility. So we're going to have to wait and see. Maybe next week they'll talk about this, maybe not. But, these second-gen devices could have some improvements. So there should also be lower end devices because they're letting in different kinds of processor types that are going to enable smaller, lighter, thinner, etc. type phones. So the Windows Phone market is going to expand out, not just up market, but also just kind of out generally to accommodate other device not form factors, but sizes and so forth. So I'm curious to see how that evolves. Maybe next week we'll be given some news about that. I hope so.
All right.
Alrighty.
Alrighty. Did you see how many phones have been sold, and how do we know?
Yeah, this is Gartner's estimation, I guess, or estimate. Yeah, Gartner's good. I mean, this is not like Joe Bob making a guess. I mean, it's they have a handle on what's out there. I expect IDC to do a similar rating for what the handset sales were like in the first quarter of 2011. Obviously, what we see here is Android at the top. Company or platforms like Symbian and RIM BlackBerry taking huge falls. I mean, absolutely huge falls. iPhone making gains, Android making gains. And then in number 5, and by the way, number 5, like not even close to number 4, I mean, way down there in number 5, almost even with everyone else combined, is Microsoft's Windows phones. And they sold 1.6 million, or I should say Microsoft's partners, right, wireless carriers primarily, but also the hardware makers who sell them directly, sold an estimated 1.6 million Windows Phone handsets in the first quarter. So that's strong enough for, 5th place out of 5, essentially, I mean, depending on the account. But I think the figure to look at here is, well, it's much bigger than that 160,000 figure that some Russian guy was throwing around a couple of weeks back. But more to the point, we've talked about the need for Microsoft to grab the number 3 spot is where I'd like to see Windows Phone, at least, right? That I think the market can sustain at least 3, possibly 4 major wireless platforms or mobile platforms, and that Microsoft needs to be part of that top bit. If you look at the Symbian figure, they had a huge drop-off quarter over quarter and will continue to do so. The question here is going to be what percentage of Symbian or Nokia customers are going to go to Windows Phone? What percentage of these people are going to continue with Nokia but adopt Windows Phone as that becomes Nokia's platform? And I think it's going to be a small percentage, relatively speaking. But if it were to be in the 20 to 30 or possibly higher percentile of Symbian's customers today, that's still well above what they need to get into the number 3 spot, especially when you consider that RIM is going to continue falling as well. So they've got that going for them, if you will. So kind of small compared to what Android and Apple are selling, obviously, but definitely in the game. And I see a lot of upside for Windows Phone. So I think long run, they're still going to be okay.
Cool. It's exciting for you because you wrote the book.
I did write the book.
Wonder, who wrote the book of Windows Phone 7?
This is this is something that's not on the list.
Please, good. Thank you.
Why?
Because I'm singing. Just anything to distract. Please move right along.
Just to stop you from talking.
Just to stop me. Yes, before I sing again.
Obviously Windows Phone is not a blockbuster seller. Likewise, my book has not enabled me to retire early as I had planned. But one of the questions that arises is, as Windows Phone does change, obviously Mango is a big change. I need to figure out how I'm going to support that from the standpoint of the book. I don't believe I'm going to be able to convince Wiley to do a second edition of the book, although that would be my first choice if that was possible. But if that's not possible, and I expect it not to be possible, what I think I would do, in keeping with that crowdsourced, how Microsoft can fix Microsoft thread, what I'd like to do is create a PDF, preferably using Wiley's template, right? I'll ask them for permission, of course, before I do this, where it will basically be an additional extra long chapter of the book that would focus on the changes in Mango. And then I could put versions of the chapter up and have people review it and suggest changes until I arrive at what is sort of a final version of it. It will be kind of a live document that I can create that people can use. So if you bought the book or if you didn't, you're looking for something that will document the changes between the first version of Windows Phone 7 and the Mango version, I will at least do something like that. So that's something to look for in the next, see what happens next week, and I'll see when and if I can start working on something like that. But I'd like to do something along those lines.
Cool.
Assuming Wiley says, yeah, you sold like 17 copies of this book.
Is this the time when I'm supposed to remind you, Paul, about the pain and suffering the last book caused and say, don't do it again?
Yeah. So, as you know,
see, he's not listening, folks.
I have the memory of a gerbil.
It's like pregnancy. And if you remember childbirth, you wouldn't do it again.
I'm not going to go back and fix anything in the first book because, as you know, it's perfect.
Right.
But what I am going to do is it would be like a chapter. I'm not talking about writing a book, like a new book. It's going to be, if you look at the typical length of a chapter in the existing book, I would guess this thing will be that length or up to twice that length. It won't be a book. It will be.
And just remember, you have to get this done before November.
Yep. It's a chapter. I mean, how could I not write a chapter by November?
You just have to get this. I'm going to say it again.
What could go wrong?
Modern Warfare 3 comes out in November. That's the limiting factor, right? You've got to get it done before then. I'm just saying.
Leo, I can do this.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing because there would be no books if computer book authors remembered how painful.
If people only remembered how horrible this is. Yeah.
There would be no books.
Well, actually, I'm thinking it might be kind of fun because, like I said, if I do it in collaboration kind of with other people, if people have a chance to provide feedback and so forth about the structure of it and the topics that I
say this is how it starts with this kind of rationalization.
I see no downside to this.
I'm sorry. I'm just teasing you.
Plus, the money will be incredible.
I'm sorry. You shouldn't have said that. I think milk just shot out of my nose. I'm sorry.
I'm all about making money, Leo.
Oh, Lord. Let us, we got I think, one of the most exciting Windows Phone picks of all time coming up in just a bit. But before we do that, you've been holding on.
I have.
You have been holding on for so long, and now you can finally release.
Let me tell you how long I've been holding on.
Just let it go. The Audible pick of the millennium.
Back in, when was it? March? I went to France for a week in March, and I visited friends. And my friend Fabrice recommended this book to me then. So that's how long it's been.
Does Fabrice know that he is an odor-killing product in the United States?
That's Fabrice.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It comes up a lot.
Your name in America.
Well, you have to, it's there are many differences between France and the United States, of course.
Yes, there
but
are.
One of them
thing
would
they
be
don't do in France is kill odors of any kind.
right. And also, they don't have guys named Steve, but they do have guys named Fabrice. So you don't see a lot of Fabrices here in the United States.
Etienne. So,
oddly enough, I know 2 people named Fabrice in France, but there you go.
There you go. Actually, apparently, I'm told, I don't know this off the top of my head, but Web6891, again, aptly named, says that Fabrice was one of the Milli Vanillis.
There is evidence to support that claim, and
we don't know because he lip-synced the whole thing.
Right. I hope he listens to this one. I know so
let us pick an Audible book. So let me, before we do that,
you might get a chance to meet him. He's going to be here in June.
Oh, dear. I'm sorry, Fabrice. Everything I said, I take back. Audible.com, a great place to go for audio books, 70,000 plus at last count. And they go up all the time because not only does Audible get the best audiobooks from all the biggest publishers, they also record their own. They've built 9 state-of-the-art studios in the Audible offices in beautiful downtown Newark, New Jersey. And they are recording like gangbusters. One of the things that they've done is they've got this Audible Frontiers series. If you're a sci-fi fan, you'll be very glad about that because Audible realized that so many of the great sci-fi books were never recorded.
Right.
Because in those days, these were pulp fiction.
Yep.
Readers didn't have cassette recorders. There were no way for the. So now they're going back, and they are collecting the greatest sci-fi classics and recording them in wonderful
You're reminding me of Tor books.
Remember Tor? Yeah.
Tarzan in space.
Yeah. They actually, I don't know if they have Tarzan, but they have some classic kind of, pulp fiction sci-fi recorded. It's just so much fun to listen. In any event, I just want you to check it out, audible.com. If you go to audible.com/windows, you can get the sign up for the Gold account trial. It's a 30-day free trial. That means your first book is free and yours to keep forever. You can cancel at any time, so there's no obligation here. And it's nice just to listen to one book, just to see if this is for you. Audible.com/windows. And Paul's picked a book for us to listen to.
Well, Fabrice has picked a book.
Fabrice.
He asked me if I had read anything by this author, being Michael Conley, and I said, no, I never really. I mean, it's impossible to go to a bookstore and not be aware of this guy, right? Because he has so many books. But apparently he is a former crime reporter from L.A., and so he turned into a novelist. And, of course, he has all this awesome background, in knowing how these things really work. And so this is the first of what is a very long series of crime detective novels starring Harry Bosch.
Is it kind of noirish? It feels noirish.
Yep.
Maybe because it's called The Black Echo.
Yeah. Well, they all take place in L.A. and
I love it. I love L.A. noir.
So this is the first one, and the obvious place to start. So.
Passy K9 says, Michael Conley's the man. Very good pick, Paul. The reviews are in. We get reviews of our picks now within seconds.
In real time.
In real time, thanks to the fabulous chat room.
Right.
It's like Silence of the Lambs or The Reporter, says Tom Mahone.
There you go.
I love it. All right. Well, good. Good pick. So this is yours free. Just go to audible.com/windows. And sign up for that Gold account, and your first month's free. Your first book's free. Cancel at any time, but it's yours to keep forever. Audible plays back on everything that you have, all the iDevices, the Zune, the Kindle. In fact, the new Kindle, I just got the new advertising-based Kindle, which they say is the best, the fastest-selling Kindle ever. Audible books show up in your archive.
I have 2 questions about this product.
Yes.
Because I'm considering this myself. One is, tell me about the ads and are they relevant and so forth. And 2, is this thing Wi-Fi only or does it have 3G?
It is Wi-Fi only.
So that might be a problem.
And the ads only show up, and the nice woodcuts that you get on a normal Kindle, that's where the ads show up. And then there's a little small banner at the menu. You never shows up in the books.
Just on the homepage.
Just on the homepage. Just on the menu and on the sleep page. And they're fine. I didn't even, to be honest.
Yeah.
And this is probably why Audible only gives you like $20 off. I don't even know what the ads are for. They look kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. I just want different content on the front page, when I pick the device up. So it'd be exciting just for that.
It's an ad.
Because those woodcut pictures are great, but they really haven't changed.
No, there's only a handful of them. So these change regularly. It is Wi-Fi only. It's the new Kindle, so it's that nice form factor. And I don't know if they're going to do this. Maybe I haven't updated the software on the older ones. I don't know, but I hope they do this on all the Kindles. But your Audible library shows up
I've not seen that. That's interesting.
And because the Kindle will play back Audible, so you can just Wi-Fi or I guess 3G. You probably might not want to, but 3G. I guess you would. It's about the same size as a.
It'd be interesting if there was some future Audible plus Kindle integration where you could have the book and the Audible version.
I want Whisper Sync. I know where you're going with this. I want it to say you've read this far.
Right, or switch between them. In other words, you listen to Audible in the car, but when you're at home, maybe you read it and it's the same book and you go back and forth. Yeah, sync them up. Leo, we have the technology.
We can. Well, I don't know. Do we have the technology?
No, it's not there yet. But I'm saying
we have technology. I don't know if we have the.
It seems like that's something that could happen.
Audible.com. Audible.com/Windows. Give it a try today. I think you'll like it. And now, the best, the finest, the most wonderful Windows Phone pick we have ever had.
Wow. That's quite a claim. Actually, I'm not even sure that's true, Leo, but thank you for that. So I don't have my full slate of picks and tips this week because I was away all week and it was just too hectic. But what I do have is a Windows Phone app pick, which is my own app, my official kind of Paul Thurrott app.
Woohoo! Yay! My own app. Did you write this? No.
No. Dimitri wrote it, right?
Oh, Dimitri did it.
The TWiT app, yeah.
Dimitri does the great TWiT app. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was modeled after that. Shamelessly ripped off from that, really.
Oh, no. Dimitri, thank you.
Yeah. No, he did a great job, and especially having to deal with the folks at Penton and all that stuff. We wanted to get it done by Tech Ed, and it was funny. I showed up on the Tech Ed show floor. They have a conference floor like at other trade shows, and they had this huge poster of me, like the app was like a picture of a Windows Phone, and it was very strange. I didn't know they were doing it.
I saw your tweet or whatever of that, and I just thought that's Facebook. I thought that was so great. I just love that.
It was just weird because I walked around the corner and it's just imagine seeing a poster of yourself. I mean, it was just a.
Oh, I have.
Of course.
Wait till you have a life-size cutout of yourself in overalls.
There you go.
Yeah, that's when I knew I had made it big.
It's strange. Yeah.
So what is on this? It's the Paul Thurrott Pocket Tech app, besides a picture of you drinking coffee from a mug.
Right. So there is that, of course. But, so there's a bunch of different things in it, some of which is available just publicly on the web. So this is a way to get at it in the mobile form. But there's also some unique content that's specific to the app. So it's a Windows 7 app, right? So you get those different columns. You can swivel between each of the different views. So the views that we have in the app are featured, which is an analog. If you look at my website, we've got that main list of text in the middle, which is all the recent stuff. And then over on the right, there are these promotional graphics for certain articles, usually the 5 latest articles or whatever. Those are represented in this. Those are actually called featured articles internally at Penton. But so we have a featured column in the app, and has nice graphics for each of those. So I think there's actually 7 or 10 of them in the app, not 5, but recent, high promotion, SuperSite specific articles. There's a recent column, and that actually aggregates content from 3 different Penton feeds. It's everything on the SuperSite for Windows, everything on the SuperSite blog, and everything I wrote separately for Windows IT Pro. And that includes a weekly commentary that I do, as well as anything that appears in the print magazine. And you can actually choose which of those to display. So if you only wanted to see the SuperSite stuff, you could actually get rid of the other stuff. You can choose, and that all appears in that recent column. And I just turned the app off like an idiot, so I'll go back to it. I'll try to go back to it. Oh, Windows Phone, why have you failed me? So I don't know. Somehow email came up, even though I clicked my own app.
It's just you're all thumbs when you're on the air.
I know. There's an exclusive column, and that's actually it's a feed of its own. It doesn't appear anywhere in the web, and it's going to be exclusive to the mobile app, and it's basically Twitter style posts, if you will. Some of them are clickable, meaning there's a hyperlink associated with them. It will load whatever article I'm commenting on, and that's something I update throughout the day. So there should always be 3 or 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever, little posts that go into this exclusive feed, essentially, and that's something, again, that is literally exclusive to the app. There's a phone column, and that's for my Windows Phone Secrets blog, as you would expect. And then there's a podcast column, and that's for our Windows Weekly stuff. So as with the TWiT app, you can listen to or watch the audio and or video versions of our podcasts. So that's all available inside the app.
Fantastic. I'm so happy for you. And now ladies and gentlemen, you can say what you've always wanted to say. Or is that Paul Thurrott in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? Is that what you said?
It is what I said.
Okay, I just checked. I hope I read that right.
Stand by that comment. Yes. So for those who are wondering, eventually we're going to have iPhone and Android versions. We're actually working on those now. So sometime this summer.
That'll be good. I'd like that.
There'll be more Paul to go, as we say.
More Paul to go.
And then hopefully Penton will do more of this stuff. I'd like to see. I mean, we have a lot of awesome content at Windows IT Pro in particular, and hopefully this is the beginning of something for these guys. We move slowly sometimes, Leo, but
come on, let's admit it. There's no one there at Penton. It's just Paul Thurrott. It's just you.
Oh, no, I can assure you, there's a lot of people there at Penton.
Oh.
It's a very big company.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're the only one I've ever heard of.
Sure. No, we actually have a lot of seriously big names in the IT Pro community.
All right.
Absolutely.
I'm just teasing them. I don't want to get in trouble with anybody.
It's okay.
Paul Penton Media, Thurrott. Paul's site is the SuperSite for Windows, winsupersite.com. Do check it out. Did you redesign?
I did.
Every time I go there, it looks different.
No, this is going to be it for a while. I was not happy with the complexity of the
I like
site.
this. It's clean.
I said, look, we've got this mobile app coming out. This thing has to look right. It should be all, styled the same and all that kind of stuff. So
no, this is good. And you know what? It's funny because I'm sure you have the same number of ad units, but it feels like there's more content here.
Yep. It was too busy.
Yeah. It just, I mean, and some people might complain, it's so text heavy. No, I'm looking for that on a site. I want to see all these
No, what people complain about are ads, and as I said to one guy, I said I would give just once. I would give, and I don't want this email, so please don't listen to this and then do it. But I'd love for someone to write me and say, I actually really like your stuff, and I occasionally click on the ads because I know you actually get paid that way,
right.
I know that you're not just doing this as a charity. But of course, you get people who complain about the ads, and it's like, I'm sorry, I don't really. I have nothing to do with that. I have always fought for less, and I'm
going to show you what a big man I am.
Yeah.
Because there used to be a nice big picture of you in the podcast and, what the next show is and all that stuff. And that's been...
No.
That's it's in the podcast. I know. It's under the menu.
No. Hold on. See the fixed Microsoft graphic?
Yeah.
There will be a picture of you and I there any day now because once this one goes live, that's where that will appear.
Oh, okay.
The only reason it's not there is that since we did the last podcast, I've written enough articles that it's been pushed.
Oh, I see. So that's good, actually.
No, there will always be one there. Don't worry about
that. Oh, that's good. So really what this is the most recent stuff. By the way, here's the...
That's right. Yeah, the most recent stuff that's from the SuperSite. Yeah.
See, there it is, the Windows Weekly podcast. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. And I was going to be a gentleman and not say a thing. I mean, it's fine.
Leo, your call is very important to me.
Please hold.
And if you wait long enough, you will be back at the top of my site.
Your call is very important to me. Paul, your show is very important to me. That's why I came in on my day off Friday to do this show with you. I thank you for letting us reschedule. You do know that normally we do it. I know you know, Paul, but I'm telling the others. We normally do this show. I hope you know. Thursdays,
with the schedule, yes.
11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, live.twit.tv. You can always subscribe after the fact, twit.tv/dubdub for Windows Weekly. Twit.tv/ww has a link to all the places you can find it. We have high and low quality video. Actually, let me rephrase that. All the videos of excellent quality, but we have large and small videos.
It's pretty much all low, really.
It all sucks. We have audio as well for those of you who find it easier to listen to Paul than actually look at him. All of that.
Completely understandable.
No, teasing you. In fact, Paul, you're looking...
Especially this week.
As you lose weight, your eyeballs are getting bigger. I just want to say.
My goal is to be like one of those anime kids, with the...
You're a keen...
Actually, I'm using Microsoft's camera tools. I could probably make that happen right now.
No. I don't have nightmares. Oh, what was I supposed to ask him? I just see in the chat room. Ask Paul. Do you know about Liquid Fridays? Is that what it is? No? Ask him, please, says Caffeine-Free Dave. But what should I ask him, Caffeine-Free Dave? It just says ask him.
Ask him.
I don't know. Come on, Leo. I'm dying to know if you have problems with your Xbox dashboard update.
I haven't gotten it yet. I keep turning the thing. All right, so we didn't discuss this. Microsoft is in the process of releasing a Xbox 360 dashboard update. The only two things I know that are in it are some form of a standby mode, which provides like a better power management, essentially, like it will go to sleep after an hour. And then the other thing is they're enabling PayPal functionality, which is awesome because I have so many different Windows Live accounts that are associated with the Xbox 360. There's a weird thing with Microsoft's accounts where you can't have the same credit card across different accounts. So every time I try to pay for anything, it always denies me. So my son and I have been taken to going to Best Buy to buy those Microsoft point cards anytime we want to do anything, because it's the only way we can get money into the account. And so using PayPal would actually be pretty great. I bet that will work fine. So I'm looking forward to it. But every time I turn it on, there's no way to manually check for an update on the 360, at least not that I'm aware of. But the way it works is if it's ready to go onto your console, you'll get it when you turn the machine on. It will tell you, you need to install the update. So they're rolling it out across, all the different 360s. So I haven't seen it yet.
I'll have to check. I haven't, I have 2 360s in the house and I haven't checked.
Yeah, I mean,
plus the one with the red ring. I don't think that one will update.
No. Well, by the way, so I don't know if this is the update or a coming update. They're going to change the file format on Xbox 360 game discs, and that file format will allow, I think, another gigabyte, really? Yeah, about a gigabyte of space on what is essentially a DVD disc. And some older consoles are not compatible with this new format. So there's, I don't know if it's a rumor or an actual story, but Microsoft apparently is going to be replacing those consoles for users so that they can, I don't know if they get a new console or refurbished one or whatever it is, but they'll be able to play the new format if you're not compatible. That's pretty cool too, I'm assuming it's true.
Paul, thank you. I'll let you go.
Okay.
But I will take this opportunity to remind everyone that each and every brick purchased at bricks.twit TV goes to a very good home.
Do I get an honorary brick?
Yeah, well, and I haven't told Lisa this, but I will tell you.
Do you make me? Do I have to pay for this? I mean, what's the story?
No, you don't get a brick.
Take it out of a check or something?
Yeah, we'll take it out of your massive check.
Yeah,
No, Lisa says I can do that. Yeah, no,
I'm sure she can. Yeah,
what I plan to do is pay. You know how when you have a new construction project, you have a plaque on the wall that says, when it was inaugurated or built or whatever, and who built it, and then there'll be TWiT staff members, which is 17, I think, as of this time, and then underneath that, TWiT hosts. So you'll certainly be on there, and that
will
by
this be
the way,
something where people can wipe their feet on it as they walk in the door.
I think people want to pose next to it, pointing at your name.
Yeah, right. Or middle.
But we will buy you a brick and deduct it from your check if you want.
Thanks a lot. You guys are the best.
Hey, it's $128. Don't be such a cheapskate.
That's such a huge percentage of my check. I don't even know.
I don't know. We might have to take 2 checks. Yeah, spread it out over 3 or 4 pay periods.
I would like a brick, I guess.
We'll get you a brick. I shouldn't say this. I hope Dick DiBartolo's not listening. The whole idea here is to raise money because we have this fabulous studio we're building, which you will benefit from, Paul.
I can't wait to benefit from this.
You won't benefit from it, but everybody else will.
Okay.
But we have three stuff. Maybe Penton would like to have a brick with the Penton logo.
I can't even imagine who I'd have to talk to make that happen. I'll just give you my corporate Amex number, and I'll.
Yeah, there you go. We'll just charge it.
They'll get the phone call. Like, what is? It says it was for a brick.
Now, I know that this is like, I didn't design the form, and this is the service company that's doing this Fundraisers Limited, and there's some little issues with it. For instance, if you're international, you have to call the 800 number. It's toll-free, but you have to call that 855-TWIT-BRICS, BRX. If you want to order more than 1 brick, you have to do, it's only 1 at a time.
1 at a time.
Despite these it looks like you can change this, but you can't. Nice. There's no way you could put a 2 or a 3 or anything else. It's 1 at a time, and that's because you have to
What's a brick replica? Is that a fake brick?
You can order an exact duplicate of the brick that will be mounted in the Hall of Fame for your own home.
Right. Will that come on a little stand or something? You can put it on your desk?
I don't believe it comes in a stand, but I do believe it'll be delivered by a uniformed representative of the federal government to your home in a finely crafted...
As we found out on South Park, that means Federal Express.
In a finely crafted box made from the wood of trees from the Great Pacific Northwest.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, as long as it's ecologically sound.
It's fully recyclable, including the brick if you get tired of it.
Is that what you're saying? Wood is?
Well, it's cardboard, yeah.
I see, okay.
Bricks.twit.tv, Paul. If I haven't if I haven't swayed you yet.
Swayed me.
Swayed.
Yes.
Have you been swayed?
It sounds like a Princess Bride gag, doesn't it? I have been swayed.
I do not think that word means what you think it does. Please sway your way to bricks.twit.tv and get on our wall of honor. Paul, it's great to talk to you. As always, have a great weekend, and we'll talk next week.
Sounds good.
On Windows Weekly.